Welcome to the BCEN and Friends podcast, where we hold interesting conversations about learning with a range of thought leaders, BCEN certification holders, and industry professionals. Our goal is to create value and insight for you, our professional nurses across the emergency spectrum. We hope you find our discussions interesting, informative, sometimes funny, sometimes serious, and always worth your time.
In this podcast episode, we want to introduce you to our BCEN friend, Ashely Haugen. Ashely is a nationally recognized writer, speaker, and advocate for consumer product safety. As the founder of That Water Bead Lady, Ashely has transformed her family's experience into a powerful force for change, raising awareness and driving advocacy to protect children nationwide. This episode is called History Has Its Eye on You.
I'm Holly Briggs, a professional development specialist at BCEN and one of your hosts for today, joined by my co-host, Michael Dexter, Director of Professional Development at BCEN. Hi, Michael.
Hello, Holly. Good to be with you again.
It's great to have you with us. And in this episode, we're honored to be joined by Ashely Haugen. Ashely's journey as the parent of a child who suffered a life-changing injury after a foreign body ingestion has led her to powerful advocacy work in child safety. Her perspective is both personal and inspiring, and we're grateful for the insight she'll share with us today. Michael, could you please introduce us to our BCEN friend, Ashely?
Absolutely. Ashely Haugen is a nationally recognized writer, speaker, and advocate for consumer product safety. As the founder of That Water Bead Lady, she leads efforts to support families impacted by product injuries, improve injury reporting systems, and increase public awareness of high-risk products like water beads. Following her daughter Kipley's injury, Ashely became the first parent advocate to co-author a case study in Pediatrics, which is a journal of the American Academy of Pediatrics, and contributed a vital parent perspective to medical literature. Her leadership brings personal experience and public health advocacy, driving meaningful change to safeguard children nationwide. Ashely, welcome to the BCN and Friends podcast. It's great to have you with us today.
Hi, thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah, well, the first time I ever heard about you, I actually saw a news article that was entitled Mom Speaks Out on Dangers of Water Beads. And as a certified pediatric emergency nurse myself, and Holly is as well, we both have cared for children with ingestions and certainly seen the very front lines of what this can mean. But I think it's super important that we hear from a caregiver that lives with this child day in and day out. So can you share your journey and how you ended up becoming that water bead lady?
Sure. My family, my husband and I, we purchased water beads for our oldest daughter, Abigail. She was turning 6, and she had seen an advertisement for them online. And at first we were like, no, that looks kind of messy. But then we did our research, we looked it up, and it said that, it was safe and that it was being used in therapy clinics and hospitals. And so we thought, okay, we can buy this for her. She just wanted it as a sensory toy. It's flashy, it's colorful. We're like, okay, we can do this. So we purchased it for her. Abigail played with it in our kitchen with my husband. She was always under adult supervision. Kipley, who was 1 year old at the time, she's my youngest daughter, she was never allowed to play with the beads. What we noticed after we had purchased them was that Kipley started to develop this rash around her mouth. And she's a baby. Babies get rashes, like we're thinking, okay, it's fine. We took her to the dermatologist. He's like, oh, it's just dermatitis. Like, don't worry about it. Don't use harsh soaps. I was like, I don't use harsh soaps, but you're the doctor. I'll go with what you're saying. We'll just keep putting this cream and stuff he gave us and this wash on it, but it didn't really heal. It just kept getting worse and worse. In July of 2017, Kipley woke up and she was violently projectile vomiting. I'm talking the vomit hit the wall. She then kind of like leaned forward, leaned back, her eyes kind of rolled a little bit, and then she flopped over. I thought she was just exhausted because for the last few weeks, she hadn't really been sleeping well. My husband and I had to start taking care of her and her sister in shifts. And we had taken her to the pediatrician and he said, well, sometimes around 1, babies just change. I knew as the day went on that something just was not right. She was not keeping anything down. I remember looking at her at one point and going, okay, we're going to have to get you some fluids because you must have the worst stomach flu. The little boy down the street had the stomach flu like a few weeks earlier. So I'm thinking, okay, she must have just caught a really bad version of it. Well, we took her in to the emergency room and they gave her 2 doses of Zofran and she still was throwing up. When I was pregnant with her, they gave me Zofran and my vomiting, my nausea, it all just stopped immediately. So I was like, for her to get 2 doses and still be throwing up, that's really weird. The ER doctor said to us, he looks at us, he looks at her and he's like, she looks okay, but he's like, I'm not going to send you home until she stops throwing up. I truly believe that his decision to do that is what saved her life. Because if we had gone home, we would have tried to put her to sleep, which is unfortunately what has happened to other children where they've passed away after this water bead injury has happened to them. We didn't know what was going on with Kipley. I thought maybe my mind went to maybe there's a button battery. We don't have button batteries, but you're going through as a parent, you're just thinking, what in the world could possibly be wrong with this child? They did x-rays, they did a CT scan, they were looking, they couldn't see anything. And I was just beside myself. My husband and I we're worried, we're comforting her, we're trying to be there. And there was a moment when a resident came in, and I always poke and tickle Kipley because she loves it. She would just start laughing. And I was doing that, and I noticed that when I poked her, her stomach kind of bounced back and it felt weird. And I was thinking to myself, okay, she's throwing up, she's sick. This is the least of everybody's worries. But you know what? I'm going to share this with the care team. I'm going to tell them about this weird feeling that I'm feeling in her belly. And so I told the care team comes over, they put their hand on her and do the same thing with her belly. And they're like, and then the resident, she grabs her stethoscope, she puts it on Kipley's belly and her eyes just get super wide. And I'm like, what? And she goes, it's silent. I was like, what? She's like, it's not supposed to be quiet. The bowels are supposed to make lots of noise. They're super noisy. They should not be quiet. And she then runs out of the room. I'm sitting there like, okay, what does this mean? And she comes back and she's got more people with her and a surgeon. And he says to me, he goes, look, if I don't know what's wrong with your daughter, but if we don't do surgery and we don't go in, she's not going to make it. And I just was shocked. I told him that I could handle anything but losing her. And so off she went. My husband, myself, my in-laws, my parents were all in the waiting room. I'm thinking in my mind, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to talk to Abigail about this, about what's going on. Abigail is with a friend. And I'm like, what? You're thinking about your other kids at home. You're thinking about what's happening with this child. What are they going to find? And the surgeon comes out and he shows my husband and I a picture. And when we looked at it, we immediately recognized it as pieces of the water beads that we had purchased for Abigail's 6th birthday. We were shocked. Both of us were like, how could this happen? How could she have gotten anywhere near these? They have separate play areas. Abby was always supervised. Kipley's always supervised. How in the world could this have happened? We all thought because the beads were marketed as non-toxic, eco-friendly, and biodegradable, that she would be fine, that everything, she had the surgery, everything would be okay now. But after we brought her home, the rash that was around her mouth disappeared. And I was like, wait, this has been on her face for weeks and weeks. How could it be gone now? I mean, I'm happy about it. Don't get me wrong, but like, what's going on here? And I noticed that she's floppier. She's not responding to her name when you call her. we had always taught our babies baby sign language. And Kipley started just cycling through the signs regardless of what I was asking her. She wouldn't respond back with what she had normally. We weren't able to communicate anymore. I'm freaking out. I'm just like, oh my goodness, what is going on? What's happening here? I take her to her pediatrician. Her pediatrician is like, oh, well, she's one, she's a baby. And I'm just like, something is going on. Something is good. So he put in referrals for early childhood education, early childhood intervention. He put in a referral for the developmental pediatrician. ECI, early childhood intervention, they evaluated her and found that she was developmentally delayed. And when we took her to the developmental pediatrician, he looked over everything. I had brought him a folder that was huge. And I had said to him, look, this is what my husband and I have learned what these beads are made out of. This is the science behind that. You're the doctor. You are the one who makes a diagnosis. Please tell us what's going on with our daughter. And he ended up diagnosing Kipley with toxic brain encephalopathy, which is a brain injury. And it was due to the acrylamide, which is a neurotoxic chemical that was contaminating the water beads that she had ingested.
Ashely, if you don't mind me asking, what were you doing with your career prior to this? Because I assume you weren't talking about acrylamide and water toxic chemicals.
No, not at all. Not even a little bit. I was doing web design and I was doing community management, social media community management. That was where my livelihood, that's where my life plan, where I thought I was going. And to then be immediately just put into this place of, okay, what's wrong with this child? What is going on with my baby? Why is everybody saying that, oh, this is non-toxic, but yet I'm seeing these signs and these symptoms with her? We all thought she was going to be fine. She's not fine. Obviously, something is going on. I'm thankful for the nurse that worked in the developmental pediatrician's office, because she looked at me and she goes, you're right. Something is wrong. This is not normal. What I'm seeing currently is not normal. And it was huge to hear her say that, because oftentimes you do get gaslit, because this is something that nobody's seen before. Nobody knew that this could happen. Most nurses do not get education on the fact that a lot of products that are coming in aren't always tested for everything that could potentially be in it that could cause a problem to a child. So chemicals, mechanical issues, they should pass testing, but that doesn't always happen. And sometimes the tests that we do have, they don't cover certain areas that can cause harm. Like there was no test for acrylamide in water beads.
I'm learning so much already. One, about your story, but also there is so many, I will say products, but even just toys that are marketed to kids that I'm not as familiar with. And so the fact that you are doing all of this work and all of this advocacy, it's very clear that your passion comes from your love of your daughter and the challenges that she faced in kind of this journey. I'm sure you gave us a very abridged version of that, because I'm sure living it out over the course of years was a lot, could have a lot more words than what you were able to share with us. But I will say that I really appreciate that what you were doing for your livelihood beforehand with social media and with building websites, et cetera, that it didn't probably immediately feel like that fit into where your kind of journey was going, but then it's almost like you were prepping for something you didn't know was coming. And I guess just in that same line, I'll ask, what are the main goals of your advocacy? And then also, can you tell us about some milestones and some successes? Because I know this has been years in the making. And so I'm sure there have been some struggles and a lot of work put in, but can you just highlight some of those for us?
I think probably one of the biggest things is when Kipley asked me to help her protect other children. once we got the diagnosis and we figured out exactly what had happened and what was going on with her, my focus became, okay, let's take care of her. Let's give her the best possible support system and future that we can. And I just dove into her therapies and her doctor's appointments and making sure that I was on top of everything. And then eventually Kipley started talking. And so after she had started talking, we were in the grocery and there was a mom who had little ones in her cart. And we've always been very honest and open with Kipley about what happened to her and that it was caused by water beads. And the mom was getting and picking up a water bead product. She had it in her hand. And Kipley looked at me, and at first I didn't know. I was like, what, why is she making this sad face? She's normally really happy in the store. Like, what's up? And she said, friend safe. And I was like, okay, she wants me to talk to the mom. So I went up to the mom and I shared Kipley's story with her. And Kipley, as soon as I start going into the story, is smiling now. And I could see this relief on her face. And so I realized that, okay, this is something that I can do that's also helpful for Kipley. This is something that she wants me to do. She wants me to help her keep other kids safe. The smile on her face is something I'm never going to forget when that mom put back those water beads and was like, we're going to go get some Legos. Thank you, Kipley. Thank you. I was just like, okay. Whew. And she was just so happy. And I realized that there was value in her healing by sharing our story. And there was also value in it for other parents, that their kids could be safe and could be protected. So we started sharing Kipley's story more on social media, and other families whose children were injured by water beads began to reach out to us. And so we started That Water Bead Lady because one of my friends who's a lawyer was like, Ashely, I love that you're doing this, but you should probably make that a nonprofit. I was like, you know what? That's a good idea. So we did that. And being able to help families whose kids are in the hospital, or families whose children are at home who've been sent home from the hospital because their child ingested beads and the doctors didn't know what the issue was. They didn't know what a water bead was. They thought everything was fine, but yet mom is seeing the child continuing to vomit. Being able to send parents the medical literature so that they could take it with them to the hospital to advocate for their children, that is something that I am incredibly grateful that I've been able to do that, because I know that it's made a difference and I know that it saved kids' lives. Eventually, though, I had read all of the studies on water beads, every one of them. And so I realized that there weren't cases that were like Kipley's in the medical literature. And I had, at this point, talked to numerous doctors across the country, and one of them worked at the Pediatric Environmental Health Specialty Unit, and another one, she was at Johns Hopkins, and the Pediatric Environmental Health Specialty Unit director, Elizabeth, I met her because I had helped another family with an ingestion injury that actually wasn't even related to water beads. It was related to slime. So when I talked with them, they also were like, yeah, this needs to be a case study. This needs to go into the medical literature. Physicians, nurses, they need to be able to learn from what happened to Kipley. So we wrote a case study. And I remember sitting there with my co-authors and us trying to figure out, okay, who's going to be first author? It's not something that's usual for a parent, somebody who is not a medical professional, to have their name on a paper like this. And I told them, I just want the information out there. I'm willing to not even have my name on it. And they were like, absolutely not. They said that it is critical and it is important for physicians, for nurses, for everyone in the healthcare community to understand that there can be a level of expertise that parents get and obtain on a certain topic. And having their information, having their perspective, and also their ability to collect medical records is very helpful when you are writing a paper or a case study. So we all joined together. It took us a while to write the paper. We submitted it double blind, sent it all in, and then we got a message back that said that it had been accepted. And pediatrics has a less than 10% acceptance rate. So the fact that they took our paper and they saw that it was useful and impactful and helpful and could make a difference it's so moving. And it makes my heart really happy that we've been able to put that new information out there and help move the research directions. What we asked for in the paper is that reporting product-related injury become a standard care practice. So right now, I'm advocating to see if we can get an ICD-10 code or ICD-11 code put in for consumer product-associated injury. That way, nurses and doctors can code that in and have that be part of a child's electronic health record. Things that we've had that are successful that we've already been able to achieve is in 2023, Amazon, Target, Walmart, and a number of other retailers made the historic decision to stop selling water beads marketed as toys for children. And they made that decision based off of the work and the research and the information that we had shared with them about how dangerous these products were for their consumers. Even if parents are using adult supervision, even if they are purchasing those products for older children and not allowing little ones or pets to be near them or use them, kids were still getting hurt. And they saw that. And so they decided to stop selling them, which was huge. We worked with Consumer Reports to get that done. And it's fabulous. And this year, something I'm very proud of besides the paper is that the Consumer Product Safety Commission issued a rule that gets rid of water beads that are currently on the market that are marketed as toys that swell over 5 millimeters, that have over 300 and something parts per billion of acrylamide in them. And that includes toys that have water beads inside of them, because it's not just loose water beads that have caused injuries, it's also water beads that were in stress balls and other products like that. So the CPSC's rule, over 95% of water bead products that are currently on the market cannot meet that standard. They don't. So combined, the rule and also the commitments from retailers have made it so that we essentially have a de facto ban on water bead toys. But that doesn't mean that the risk is over, because there are still water beads that are sold as decor products. And so nurses still have to watch out for the issue. But I hope we've helped a little bit.
Ashely, I don't think you could easily say you helped a little bit. I think just listening to you, I'm sitting here going, what have I done with my life? I don't feel like I've accomplished anything when I talk to somebody like you. That's a lot to be proud of. And one of the things that we had talked about earlier, I wanted to go back more to like the nursing side, because we could definitely talk about this a lot. But one thing is, especially emergency nurses, we often see somebody at one point in their life and we don't see them again. And if you take it on a much smaller scale, even somebody that comes in and let's say they break their leg and we feel like it's kind of a benign thing, here's some crutches, follow up, have a good day. And we don't think about all of the way that impacts their job, their family, people rearranging their schedules. And I mean, this is something that has literally changed your life. And so in that, you mentioned the resident that ran out of the room. You also mentioned a nurse at the developmental pediatrician's office. And so good, bad, or indifferent, what kind of ways have you seen that communication has really impacted you in a positive way, or ways that you wish nurses would go about communicating maybe a little bit better, or maybe something that just affirms what they're doing is good, but certainly like the nurse patient family collaboration, how can we do better or different in your viewpoint?
So for me personally, with my family, I feel that the best interactions were with nurses and healthcare professionals who didn't judge, who looked at our situation and went, yeah, this is dangerous. It swells up and can block a child's airway or their intestines or get stuck in their ear or nose. This shouldn't be a toy product. Hold up. Instead of looking at the situation and looking at us and going, oh, well, they didn't supervise. A lot of times we use this idea that adult supervision is going to prevent all injuries, and that's just not the case. The design of a product and the quality of its manufacturer make a difference. If it's not manufactured well and it's not designed well and it's not designed to be a toy product, it could not be safe for children. And I think that it's so important that nurses keep an open mind when they're in those situations. And also, when you see symptoms that are unusual, that aren't something that you typically would see, question that. Don't just go with the flow because it seems, sometimes something a little weird happens. No, look into it. Take a minute, take a breath. There is this tool that one of the other nonprofits that we work with called the Charlie's House Virtual Safety Experience app. It guides families room by room to identify and eliminate household hazards. It's a really cool app. So I think if more nurses were aware of that, they could share that with families, especially after a child's been injured by some sort of consumer product, letting them know, hey, there's an app. There might be other hazards in the house that you don't know about, which was a huge anxiety factor for me when we were going to come home from the hospital. I was like, what if I didn't know that this could be dangerous? What if there's other things? So letting families know that there are these tools that they could use to become more aware of the dangers of these different products, because they're out there, they're all around. I mean, we're gonna always have consumer products around. So it's important for the awareness to be out there and for families to know that these sorts of tools exist. And also, I would tell them to please report any product associated injuries that you see to saferproducts.gov, because currently, unless it's reported, the CPSC, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, doesn't always know that an injury has taken place. Currently, the only way that we can make these situations visible is by reporting. And in Kipley's situation, she was diagnosed with toxic brain encephalopathy outside the hospital setting. So the tools that we currently have, like there's this thing called the NICE database, which looks at injuries around the country. Well, it's only in 77 hospitals, and that's a probability sample. So there's over 6,000 hospitals across the country. So we don't know all of the different injuries and outcomes that are occurring. So it's really important for the CPSC to get that information. Similarly, poison control, the information that we get from them is based on calls. So if people don't ever call poison control when there is a situation that seems like a poisoning, they don't know about it. They aren't aware of it. So when they go and look through their data, they can look at the situation and go, oh, seems good. Seems like everything's non-toxic. Seems like we don't have a problem here, because no one shared that information with them about the potential harms of different products. So if nurses could do that and could share that information with families, it would be really helpful.
Michael had mentioned earlier that we're both certified pediatric emergency nurses. So we both hold the CPEN credential. And in that kind of education and that the content that you can be tested on, they do talk about foreign body ingestions. Obviously, it's very common, more common in pediatrics. And so we've always talked about things like button batteries and magnets. Those things are just more, I guess, more common examples. And to your point, when you were talking about injury prevention and talking about reporting, I think there is that, there's just these gaps, because I do believe a lot of times parents will call poison control, but they may not know exactly what the child has ingested. So then that report has some gaps in it already. And even when the nurses call poison control and say, hey, we have this going on, we may not know right away what it is that the child has ingested, or it may be like, hey, they could have ingested 6 things, or, so there's just, to me, what you were talking about as far as trying to find those gaps in the reporting, finding those gaps in the knowledge of what could be harmful to a child. if nurses can help to bridge those gaps in a way and make the environment safer, and then also build up a case for why certain things should not be allowed to be marketed to children as toys. I mean, I was certainly not had any knowledge that water beads were as toxic as they are. And so I have a daughter, and when she was, I think she was like 6 or 7, she got some, and I thought, these weird little things, I hate the way that they feel. I was just like I'm not a slime person. So I was like, oh, we got to get this out of the house. But knowing what I learned now, just from the things that you've done, I didn't realize what I kind of been allowed in my home. And I know that as a nurse, knowing what I know now, I would definitely want to share that and educate parents. So that way, again, they make the decision, about the things that they have in their home. But I think all parents just want to do the right thing and want their kids to be safe. And so, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, and also just ways that we can not only communicate and educate families, but also participate in that part of injury prevention. Because I think that's a huge place that nurses can help to, again, bridge those gaps. So thanks, Ashely.
It's really fascinating to talk to you, Ashley, about these things, because I think, again, as nurses, it's something that we see, but we don't really think about a lot of the behind the scenes that's happening with these things. And, I think you certainly have a lot to be proud of. As I mentioned earlier, I sometimes wonder what I can do differently with my own career when I look at people like you that are doing so much and so much good advocacy and nationwide help and strengthening the way that people are cared for, communicated with, as well as removing some of these harmful things from store shelves. But going back to like just the clinical aspect, was there a certain turning point in this journey where, I think if you were to walk in today and say, I'm that water bead lady and here's the things I've done, you would certainly foster a lot of respect. But at what point did you start to realize they're listening? There's some momentum swelling with this.
So I think that moment for me came when I took Kipley to a birthday party, and a mother who was there told my story about water beads to me, not realizing who I was and the advocacy work that we were doing. She just randomly had started talking about how she saw a video about water beads and how they were super dangerous. And she was like, there's a little girl who got poisoned, and who had another one had an obstruction, and then this other little, and I was like, yeah, that was my child. My child was obstructed and poisoned by water beads. And she was shocked, but it made me realize the reach that we've been able to have. And I think it is so important that everybody realizes that what you do in the space where you are matters. If it hadn't been for the resident that day, if it hadn't been for the ER doctor, if it hadn't been for the nurse at the developmental pediatrician, we would not be where we are now. Everybody has a role to play where they are, and each one of those moments of impact make a huge difference in someone's journey. So you may feel like you're playing a small role, but really your note could be the thing that allows that family later on to save millions of children.
It's kind of the ripple effect. Like, you just don't know how far the impact can be, and something that seems very small at the time. I've definitely sat back and thought, there have been moments when I've been talking to a family or talking to a patient, and I walk out and it's Tuesday for me, and come to find out later that meant something to them, that whether it be talking to them about what they're in the hospital for, or talking to them about one of the medicines that they're on, or just spending a little extra time and seeing how things are going at home, or do you have what you need to take care? Do you need some supply? Like, whatever that might be. And those moments, again, for me, it's Tuesday, but for someone else on the other side of that, it could really be the thing that makes an impact in their life, and then they go do it for others. And so I think that everything that you shared, very valuable, but also just, you're not aware sometimes in the moment of the impact that you can have. So taking time in those little things can be a very, very big thing. So again, thank you for sharing all of that. I get a chance to ask a few rapid fire questions. So we're going to jump into that part of the podcast, which I truly enjoy. We get to know you a little bit more than just that water bead lady, although I'm sure that will come up. But I have some categories of favorites. And again, these can be yours or in honor of Kipley. You can also share some of hers if you'd like. Here we go. Your favorite book or a quote that really inspires you.
So my favorite book is, and this is going to show how big of a nerd I am, it is Exploring the Dangerous Trades by Alice Hamilton. Alice Hamilton was actually the first woman to teach at Harvard, but she wasn't actually like when women weren't even allowed to attend Harvard. She is the mother of occupational environmental medicine. Something that she did that I thought was amazing is that she went through the hospital records during the times when we didn't have blood tests for lead poisoning. She went through the hospital records of different patients and was able to link their illnesses and their diseases that they had gotten from lead poisoning to the poisoning, and was able to figure out that it was actually lead dust that was causing a lot of these issues, that people were breathing this in, they were bringing it home on their clothing. And she did that by going through the hospital records. So she's very inspiring to me, and reading her book is just amazing. And it's one of my favorites.
What you just described, I was like, man, I feel like Ashely could write a book. So yeah, we'll look for that on the horizon. Okay. Favorite movie, TV show, or it could be a binge-worthy series. We're always interested in that around here.
So I just finished binging When Life Gives You Tangerines on Netflix, and it is a Korean drama. It is really good. I was shocked at how into it I was. It's 16 episodes long, each one's an hour, and I finished it in like 4 days. Set and was like, I'm gonna watch this, just go for it. And then the other one that I watched that's a guilty pleasure is Hunting Wives. That was trashy and good, and I loved it. I loved every minute of it.
All right. Literally within the last week, someone has talked to me about that show. They're like, it sucked you right in. And I was like, okay,
you need to watch
that. And then I just wrote down When Life Gives You Tangerines. Cause again, anything where somebody's like, it was a vacuum and I got sucked in, I'm immediately interested. I'm like, oh, I'm looking for a new black hole. Let's see what we can fall down.
Now, I would be remiss if I did not mention the thing that Kipley loves right now, which is the K-pop Demon Hunters. She has decided that we are going to be K-pop demon hunters for Halloween. But the problem is the oldest one has stated that she will not be a K-pop demon hunter. So there's just me and Kipley. And so we've told my husband, sir, you might have to be the third. You might have to be the third for us. He was just like, I mean, okay, I guess. If it's going to make her happy, bring her some joy. I'm like, yeah.
That's amazing. I've seen many memes and videos coming out, and it's like parents when their child first watches the K-pop Demon Hunters and they're like, oh, what is this? And then 3 times in and they're like dancing to it and singing it. And I'm like, okay, I love that when a child takes something that they get into and then all of a sudden you're in it with them, you're with the characters, you're singing the songs, and you just feel like, I'm just so lucky that I get to be a part of something I probably would never have watched on my own. But that's the joy of kids. They take you places you didn't know you were ever going to go, and then you're singing. So, all right. Well, speaking of that, is there a favorite song or a musical artist that just instantly can move you?
So for me, that it's not one song. It's actually the whole soundtrack of Hamilton. I pretty much, whenever I'm writing, I listen to that in the background. I just can't help it. It's like, it's soothing for me, and I will just sit there and write. And my husband's like, you're writing like you're running out of time. I'm like, yes, yes, I am.
You got to take your shot, like
exactly.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I love that. One of my sisters, she's a big Hamilton fan, and she knows how to, I hesitate to call it the rap, but she knows how to do the parts where it's very syncopated and to be on it. And it's not like these are easy words. They're like there are a lot of really long words that are in there. So I appreciate that. And for some people, music can be distracting. And for other people, I think it just helps to focus and really keep you motivated. And so I definitely fall into that second category. I find music just really helps to keep me going. So anyway, we could stay here, but I'll move on to my last question, which is, do you have a self-care go-to or a way that helps you reset? Because you are keeping pretty full schedule there, Ashely. So how do you reset?
I listen to smut audiobooks a lot. His face, I'm sorry, everybody can't see it, but your face, you were just like, wait, what? Yes.
I'm laughing because you know what? You're not alone. So
I finished Fourth Wing. I finished A Crown of Thorns and Roses, that whole the whole series. I finished all those. I can't help it. I've been like this for years. And when I was growing up, my mom had a bookshelf of like all these romance novels. And so I remember when I finally got old enough, she was like, all right, finally I was old enough. She's like, here is one of the books. And I was like, oh, read it. Couldn't stop. So now
down the well,
down into the rabbit hole. Now I can't help myself.
The good news is, Ashely, you won't have to like keep them away from a shelf, because at least it's like all in your audio. Yes. You're like, that's locked down. They can't get to that.
Exactly. I'm like, you have your own Libby account that's separate. You have your own Audible books that are not near mine. So they can listen to all their stuff over there. But quite funny.
I must say that if somebody highly recommends something, or they're like, this is great, like, I'll read it. And so like nonfiction to fiction, I pretty much will try to read anything. And so I think whatever helps you reset, whatever helps you give you just a moment of, whether that's peace, relaxation, whatever that might be, I think knowing what that is and taking time to do it and dedicating some like intentional, like, this is what helps me, then go for it. Because again, you got to fill up your cup, put your mask on beforehand. Well, Ashely, if our audience wants to follow you online, what social media platforms could they do that on?
So you guys can go for the nonprofit. You can go to thatwaterbeadlady.org. And for other Water Bead Lady information, you can go to Instagram, because I'm on there as Water Bead Lady. And then on TikTok, you can follow my personal TikTok, which is Display Not Play, or That Water Bead Lady, which is the same thing on TikTok.
Awesome. Well, I will make sure to include that in the blog for this episode.
Well, Ashely, I really appreciate you being with us today and talking about your passion for water beads and the advocacy around them, I should say, not specifically for water beads, but your passion for the advocacy of them, and certainly appreciate the fact that you've taken such a difficult situation with your daughter and used it to impact so many. I know that doesn't always make it easier for caring for her and the things that you have to deal with there, but it certainly does help to know that you're making such a profound impact. So thank you for everything. Thank you for sharing your story with us, and all of the ways that we as nurses and those listening can help impact others around the world. We appreciate it.
Somebody wanted to say hello.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Well, your mama was just talking a little bit about you, or a lot of bit about you. So we appreciate her sharing that story with us. Thank you for jumping on for a second to say hello. I want to take this time to thank Ashely for joining us for this episode of BCEN and Friends. Ashely, thank you for sharing Kipley and your family's journey with us. Your experience as a parent navigating the aftermath of foreign body ingestion has offered us really powerful insight, and your story reminds us that personal experiences can drive meaningful change, and your voice helps strengthen our collective commitment to protecting children and families. And to all of our listeners, stay tuned as we bring new, insightful episodes of BCEN and Friends. If you have an episode suggestion, we'd love to hear from you. You can send us a message to bcn@bcn.org. I'm Holly Briggs, here with Michael Dexter, and on behalf of the entire BCEN team, we thank and celebrate you for all that you're doing as professional nurses across the emergency spectrum. Until next time, we are out.